15 seconds before they reached the tuition center, my parents had to call me and they will count down with me. 10, 9, 8. And then when it goes to 1, I had to run into the car because it was so unsafe to look like this and to roam around on the street.
Cindy Pratiwi talks about her life growing up as Chinese in Indonesia.
In May 1998, violent anti-Chinese riots erupted in the capital, Jakarta. More than 1,000 people were killed.
We were being attacked and we had to protect ourselves. I was 6 years old back then.
At 15, she came to Singapore on a full scholarship.
There was a guilt of enjoying the privilege of being a majority race and having it so easy.
Today, Cindy is a VP of a regional impact investment fund, managing over $150 million.
We have reached 35 million beneficiaries. We also make the same returns that other private equity funds do.
And is dedicated to investing in Indonesian communities.
If I were just born a few streets down the road in my parents' house in Medan, my life would have turned out very, very differently. The fact that I speak Bahasa makes all the difference. They have tears in their eyes when they talk to me, when they tell me how their lives have changed.
When does impact investing not work?
Wow. Well...
All right, so we'll start off with a pretty easy icebreaker question.
Mm-hmm.
Can you share the story behind your last name?
Yes. It is. I'm glad you brought this up. So I was born with the name Cindy Pratiwi Arsjat. Very common for Indonesians to have 3 names. So when I was in primary school, you know, when you're young, you don't know what's important, what's not important. So I was doing my national exam and I thought, my name is too long to be spelled out. So I only put in like Cindy Pratiwi. I'm sure for some I only put Cindy. And again, I didn't know what was important. And then the results came back. It was Cindy Pratiwi. They asked me to check, like, is everything correct? I said, yeah, everything is correct. And then my certificate, my primary school certificate was issued with just Cindy Pratiwi without my last name, Arsjat. And I was like, oh, okay, this is not too good, but it's okay. I mean, I will correct it when I'm in secondary school. So secondary school came along and before I could finish that, I applied for Singapore secondary school and I had to use my primary school certificate. So I had to become Cindy Pratiwi without the Arsjat. And then I got in and then I came here, I had to apply for, I matriculated with Cindy Pratiwi only. And then I had to be issued student pass and it was Cindy Pratiwi. And I opened a bank account and it was Cindy Pratiwi. And then one day I traveled and then they realized that my national identity and my basically everything else, like student pass and everything, is showing different names. And that's when, you know, the officer was like, this is not the same person. And I said, oh, no, like this, I know, like it's a mistake. I did a thing in primary school. So yeah, we had to change everything. So I changed my birth certificate.
Oh my God.
And everything else was changed. Like we had like a family certificate in Indonesia. So that has to be changed as well. So
your family certificate.
Yeah, so it lists like who's part of your family. So my dad, my mom, my brother, and I. So everyone has Arsjat except me. So I'm an outcast.
All of this happened because you were too lazy to spell out your
in
primary school.
Yeah, but how would you know? Like you're so young and you thought, this is just one of those things. Yeah, but now I know. But yeah, because of that, Pratiwi is now my last name instead of my middle name. And I no longer belong to the Arsjat family, which is sad.
So when we talk about queerness and how people can be disowned, you did it to yourself.
Yeah, I did it. I made my own family. Chosen family, the Pratiwi family.
Which is just you.
Just me.
Yeah.
One and only. I mean, I have a dog. I mean, she can join my family. Yeah. God make Pratiwi.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, that's super funny because it's like a snowball effect as well. It's like, oh, you got your exams back and you're like, oh, that's interesting. And then something else came up and you're like,
Yeah.
And then it took, what, a year of like moving to Singapore and like standing at the border for you to be like, oh shit.
Yeah. This is
I can't.
This is going to be a problem.
I can't believe you changed your birth certificate as well.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, we have to organize everything. Yeah.
And how did your parents feel?
they thought it was so silly. But I mean, I think they're just so used to me doing these things to myself. Yeah, I got into trouble a lot when I was younger. So I think they're just very used to it at this point in time. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, with the, the queerness, the presenting masculine, I think losing your last name is like not so bad.
That's fair. That's fair. So how was it like growing up in Indonesia as a Chinese kid?
Yeah, it was difficult. I think, well, we are a minority. Chinese Indonesians make up just 5% of the whole population. So it's truly difficult being a minority. I think you see it a lot in the naming, the naming rights of many Indonesians. I mean, I'm sure you know this, but if you were Tan, like if you were Tan back then, you have to change your name to Tanu Wijaya or Tanoto. If you are an Ang, you have to change it to Angga Kusumo. If you are Wang, you have to change to Dharma Wongso or something some Indonesian sounding. And that is basically taking the rights of you being even Chinese presenting or Chinese sounding. And not too long ago, in 1998, we had like racial riots where, the Chinese were targeted. And I was 6 years old back then. And I remember we still had to go to tuition, of course.
The Chinese parents
people were
I don't care
dying.
what's happening.
Yeah, education is number one.
You're not missing this math test.
Exactly. So I remember going to tuition, and I was being picked up and sent everywhere because it was so unsafe. And my parents had to call me when they were about to reach. So like 15 seconds before they reached the tuition center, they would call me and they would count down with me. So like 10, 9, 8. And then when it goes to 1, I have to run. I had to run from the tuition into the car because I just couldn't. It was just so unsafe to look like this and to roam around on the street because that's just what the situation was at that point in time. And it sounds so crazy, right? Because it's 1998, like I guess we were not born. I was born. Just to claim, I was born. But yeah, it is wild. And to think that actually I'm from this part of Indonesia called Medan. Actually, Medanese, we have 10% Chinese. So actually it's not so bad compared to the rest of Indonesia. And we still got it pretty bad. Yeah. So yeah, it was hard. But I also kind of didn't feel that hardship so much. I mean, other than the naming rights, the violence, because I was I was in a Chinese school, my friends were all Chinese. So I think I think a little bit of, when I came to Singapore, I think I started to feel a different set of difficulties. Coming from minority race and then coming to Singapore and suddenly becoming majority race, I think there was a lot of discomfort and guilt in the beginning even.
When you came to Singapore?
Yeah, there was a guilt of being, enjoying the privilege of being a majority race and having it so easy, I guess. And I think this guilt and discomfort came from the fact that I know what it feels like to be on the flip side of it. And I experienced that. So, I mean, to give you some examples, I've been renting since I came to Singapore. I have never had problems renting. In fact, my property agents would often remind me that because I'm Chinese, I will have a priority over many other races. There have been many situations where, after Tantric or whatever, I would never have problems hailing a cab. Taxis would stop for me compared to my friends who are of different race. I have never felt unsafe in Singapore. Nobody has ever come up to me and say, go back to your country, or ask me, where are you from? Where are you really from? I've never had to experience any of this. and it feels so easy, and it makes me so uncomfortable because I know it's not this experience is not the same for other people. Yeah, I try to make myself quite aware of the injustices, the social injustices, and I, even as I'm talking, I realize that there are actually quite a lot of spaces that I occupy that could use a bit of inclusion, like diversity and inclusion. And like I'm not perfect, and I'm still trying to work towards being more racially sensitive and aware. And the society is also not there yet. But I hope that we will progress as a society. Yeah. Sorry, it became like a racial thing.
No, we love
very
it.
quickly.
You're making my job very easy.
Yeah.
I have so many questions about your growing up in Indonesia. I actually didn't hear that anecdote before.
Yeah.
What I have heard was growing up, because we've met a few years ago, and you're very proud of being Indonesian and growing up in Indonesia, and so it's come up where I've like joked about like, oh, let's grab Indonesian food.
Yeah.
And you made this remark a few years ago, and I'd love for you to expand on it, which is that growing up, you never ate Indonesian food. You came to Singapore, and then you started appreciating and enjoying Indonesian food.
Yeah, it is. It's true. So I don't know if this is family specific or if it is a whole Chinese Indonesian experience, or if it's a Medanese Chinese experience. But what happened was because we were so discriminated against by the government at that time, my family kind of took on like a victim mentality, where we said, we will stand up for ourselves, and we would not subscribe to the Indonesian anything, Indonesian food, Indonesian culture, Indonesian art. So I think that became a thing because they were being attacked, right? The Chinese Indonesians were being attacked, and in order to protect ourselves, we kind of create this defense mechanism where we block out anything Indonesian. And we say, okay, we will mingle among ourselves, like the Chinese, we mingle among ourselves, we will eat our own food, we will appreciate our own culture, and anything outside Chinese is bad. Yeah. So I remember, so growing up, the first language I spoke was Mandarin, and then I spoke Hokkien, like we speak Hokkien to each other, to friends. We speak English in English classes. And the last language I learned was actually Bahasa. Bahasa Indonesia was the last language I learned. And at home, I had an Indonesian helper at that time. And my mom would ask my Indonesian helper to laugh at me if I ever spoke Bahasa, because it was seen as the lesser language, at least in my family. And I don't want to paint this picture of my mom as the bad person, because I can totally understand where she is coming from at a point in time. The circumstances was that we were being attacked, and we had to protect ourselves. And we had to build this wall, this like very big and thick wall to not let anyone from the outside in. Yeah. And it became that I didn't have any Indonesian food when I was in Indonesia, because all I had was Chinese. Yeah. That's what happens, I think, when there is so much violence and like a lot of discrimination. Yeah, but I must say that things are better now. It's no longer the case now. And I have and my parents have started to embrace they are very Indonesian kid. Yeah. Yeah. You know how when you are denied something, you kind of come back with like a vengeance.
Yeah.
So I have become very Indonesian in my own right. So I love Indonesian food. I love Indonesian culture. I love the music. I love the artists. So I love the authors. So I have become much, much more Indonesian than Chinese, actually, which is funny because I look like this. Yeah, and my parents actually have made some remark like, oh, you're so Indonesian, you're so you're so like into the local music. Yeah, of course, I'm Indonesian. Yeah, and if you come to my room, like my whole decor is just Indonesia. Like I have batik, mattress, like like batik, like sideboard, like Indonesian sideboard. Like it's super Indonesian. Yeah.
How did your parents or family find themselves in Medan?
So I think 2 generations. So my grandfather, they took a boat from China. So my grandfather was the one who came over. And I know that journey for them was very difficult because they lost some of their siblings in the journey in a very violent way, which I will not explain in this podcast. But yeah, they were killed along the way by I think it was the Japanese at that point in time, and they didn't make it. They didn't make the journey. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so your family's been in Medan for a couple generations, 2 generations.
2 generations. Yeah.
I see. And what inspired you to come to Singapore at a young age?
Yeah. So even at the age of 10, my parents have decided that I was going to come to Singapore. They were quite an intense and very effective parents. So at 10 years old, they already created an email address for me. So it was Yahoo at that point in time. It was Cindy Pratiwi at Yahoo. No, it's Cindy Pratiwi Arshad at yahoo.com.sg when I was 10 years old, because they knew that they were going to send me to Singapore at 15. Yeah, so they planned ahead. They prepared me for it. They started me on alcohol early because they knew that they were not able to protect me.
Wow.
From I don't know, bad people. So they wanted me to be able to hold my drinks. They really prepared me from an early age. Yeah.
And so growing up, you also knew that you were going to go to Singapore at a young age. It was prime since young. How did that affect your connection to Indonesia or to your Indonesian roots? Knowing that at a pretty young age, you were going to be, I don't know if shipped off is an aggressive term, but that
flown off. It's not a boat.
Yes, that's true. You're not imported. But
like pigs.
Okay, all right.
That's an interesting question. I never really thought about that. To be honest, at that point in my life, I did not know much about Indonesia or Indonesian culture. It was only when I came to Singapore that I had the freedom to explore anything I want. So I should also add that when I was in Indonesia, because again, I was primed to come to Singapore, my parents lined up a lot of after-school activities for me. So at one point in time, I think I had 8 to 10 tuitions or after-school activities. I can name them. Like it's a good balance between school, arts, and sports. So I had ice skating, like proper ice skating training. I had piano. I had guitar lessons. I had, of course, the usual math. I had English. I had Chinese lessons. I was also in the school badminton club, but I was also enrolled in like the badminton school in Indo. I played table tennis for school, but I was also enrolled in like a table tennis external club. I was in drawing. Yeah, I mean, there was not a lot of time for me to, I guess, be a kid. I remember only having an hour or 2 of TV a week. And that was always SpongeBob SquarePants. And I didn't really had time, I guess. It was always school. I would change in the car, like to go to my next destination, which is usually math tuition. And then I would change in the car again to go to badminton or table tennis training. And then I would change again. And then I would go to like piano lesson. Goodness. And then it would be like that. And then it would be like 11 p.m. And then I would go home and sleep. I would eat in the car. Yeah. So it was very intense. And it's interesting, right? So I was at one point of time in my life, I thought that was cruel and that was intense. But I think, thanks to therapy, I have come to realize that it's not like it is. Maybe the execution can be better, but it was all from a place of love, and that's all I can feel actually now when I think about it. I feel so much love coming from my parents, and it was coming from a place where they really wanted to give me everything they could.
Yeah.
They probably didn't have the same opportunities back then, and they wanted to make sure that I could have everything I wanted. Yeah, and education was very important to them, and yeah, they wanted me to learn everything. Yeah.
And I'm assuming that the program that they were priming you for was quite competitive.
Yeah, for sure.
Can you share that program, that scholarship that they applied for you?
Yeah, so there are usually two kinds of scholarship, and that Indonesians would come to Singapore for. One is like a ASEAN scholarship, it's called, where someone from MOE, I think, would come to your city and just pick a few students that they like, or that I shouldn't say they like, but that qualify maybe. And another is a school-based scholarship where the principal of the school who is hiring would personally make a trip down.
Wow.
And kind of look at it, like interview the students and handpick them. So I went for the school-based one, and that school was SGS. So the principal came, and yeah, I remember we had to do IQ tests. We had to do many tests. And I got in. I remember actually during the interview, the principal asked me what I wanted to be, and English is not my first language, and so I said, I want to be architecture. And then she's like, you mean an architect? I'm like, yes, an architecture. Sorry, I did not become an architecture in the end. I'm just a plain old finance person. Yeah. So yeah, that's it was very difficult to get into, admittedly. But yeah, I think it's also a lot of luck in this kind of thing. Yeah.
And so they were priming you for something that had no guarantee
Yeah.
that you were going to get into.
Yeah.
I mean, luckily it worked out, but
Yeah.
I'm just thinking
What
like
if it
the
didn't?
anxiety
Yeah.
on your parents' part.
Yeah.
And you talk about how much love you feel for them now, and I agree, because I think my parents were the same way.
Yeah.
Like, first generation immigrants to
Immigrants, yeah.
Canada. We don't need to talk about that, but it's a very similar anxious attachment to,
Yeah.
okay, I just want to make sure my kid is secure.
Yeah.
Because I have not been given that.
Yeah.
But the reality of it, and you're painting the picture now, it's like, it's really hard. There are a lot of people who tried really hard as well and didn't make it.
Yeah.
And did your parents have a backup plan for if you didn't?
Yeah. So if I didn't make it at 15, they would send me for university here. So I came in secondary school. Yeah. If I didn't make it, they would send me for university here. Yeah. And that was, they already made plans for that. At least. Yeah, they did.
Got it. And did they do the same for your brother?
Yeah. So my brother also came around the same time as me. It was probably also planned that we would go at around the same time. So he came in the same year as me. He enrolled in university, and I did my secondary school.
And so the two of you had each other in
We kind of
Singapore.
did, but we didn't really meet up. He was enrolled in NTU, so that was not Singapore. Let's be real. I'm kidding.
NTU slander. All right, here. Okay.
No, I'm kidding.
Look
Yeah,
at the
but it's
smug
super-
SMU alumni.
No.
We're filming this on Yellen US
Yeah.
campus, just to let you know. But anyway. So how was it like growing up in Singapore without your parents?
Yeah. When you come from that very intense childhood, I came to Singapore and suddenly I didn't have any responsibilities. I didn't have to go for tuition. I never had any more tuition after that. So I just felt very free. And suddenly I felt like, like I can think of who I am as a person. Who am I? Like what are my values? What are my principles? So I think that was the time when I became really, really, I would say like a bad student. Like I was really a bad student. I remember my classmates would call me the most unscholarly scholar.
Wow, what a
I
tagline.
know.
And you're saying it with such pride now.
No, there is no pride, but I'm glad I played because I didn't play when I was younger. I didn't play before I was 15. So I played a lot when I came to Singapore. Yeah. And thankfully, I still made it. Thankfully, I still have a full-time job and I consider that a success.
I actually have never heard so much about your Indonesian upbringing.
Yeah.
I just needed to invite you on a podcast.
I know, and
to
everything
get
will come
it.
out. Yeah. Who needs a therapist now? I mean, we have Betty.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm here for.
Yeah.
So everyone in our friend circle knows that you love your job. Please share for the viewers, what is impact investing?
Yeah. So it's true. I do love my job. Impact investing. So I'm going to try to explain this in the most like layman term. So it may not be like if you're here for all the finance terms, you won't get it. So impact investing is when we create a basket and then we go around to rich people basically and ask them for some of their money. And then we put them in the basket. We get like 100 of these people. We put them all in the basket. And then we turn around and we look at people who actually need the money. People in usually developing countries like Indonesia, Philippines, Vietnam. And we see how we can allocate this money in companies that actually help the low-income population in these countries. But I think I should also say that impact investing is a part of sustainable investments. Like many things in life, sustainable investments is a spectrum. And impact investing is the far end of that spectrum where you invest in a company with a purpose to make an impact and to generate returns. And you measure the impact and you report on the impact. Unlike traditional investing, where you just think about the risk and returns, impact investing is when you actually think about the positive impact that you're going to make on low-income beneficiaries. And this is a part of my job that I really, really enjoy because I get to travel to all these countries, developing countries like Indonesia, Thailand, Philippines, Vietnam, and I get to meet the end beneficiaries and ask them, actually, how have your life changed after you use this product or this software or this service? And I get to talk to the real people who are really experiencing the difference. So if it is an agriculture company that we are thinking of investing, I actually talk to the farmers and ask them, hey, like how is it like actually being a farmer? Like what are the difficulties you face in this part of the world? How have your life changed after you use this software or service? And sometimes the answer is, yeah, like it has tremendous impact. Like, I have really felt the difference. And sometimes the answer is, yeah, not really, because, it's not really working. Like, we don't really use it here. Sometimes I talk to students or teachers who use the app for, let's say, if it's an education company that we are assessing. Sometimes I talk to patients if it's a healthcare company that we are assessing. And that to me is like super, super exciting. And because of this additional due diligence that I do in my job, I can honestly touch my heart and say, yeah, like impact investing is making a difference in the world because I talk to them, I see them with my own eyes. The other thing that makes impact investing different from traditional investing is this concept of additionality. So additionality is when you are actually allocating money to a place where money is usually scarce. So it is usually in developing countries. It is usually in growth companies where it is, their future is not really certain. And that's one concept of additionality. The other factor is also after you make an investment, what is the additionality of your money? So that is where active engagement comes in. We work with our company to really make them a better company, actually, like whether it's operationally, whether it's in the sustainability of their supply chain, whether it is like we organize like a loan syndication with other lenders in the region. So if you think about it, there are two types of impact that we are doing. One is the impact that the company is making on the end beneficiaries, right? Because their product is really good, their service is really good. And another is the impact that we are making using the money that we give to the company. So there's the additionality that we are doing. So there are two types of impact that you can think of in this case.
So if I were to summarize, you're looking at, first of all, the company needs to have decently good fundamentals.
Yeah.
But you're also prioritizing and actually recognizing the importance of creating products and services that benefit the low income people on the other end.
Correct.
And their business model has to be such that the richer they become, so the more profits they generate, the better off society, the low income people are so it has to be very like direct.
Correct. Yeah. Or I would say actually it's the other way around. The more the poorer people benefit, the more they make money. So when we pitch to Asian investors, we usually downplay the impact a little bit. So it sounds a little bit like, hey, this is a really good investment. You're gonna make, X amount of dollars. This is, backed by really good investors. We have like DFIs, like we have development finance institutions backing this. And by the way, just a small note, you also make small impact. Like just a small note, like by the way. And we do see that this is changing, but it was like that in the last fundraising round that we did. It is the European investors who want to see the impact upfront. So when we pitch to them, we say, hey, this is an impact investing. Yeah, you are going to be able to, remember that allocation that you say you're gonna do like 85% allocate to sustainable investments. This is going to be one of it, like you are going to make your board really happy because this is impact investing. This is our track record in terms of impact investing. We have benefited 35 million beneficiaries. It's going to be more with your support. Yeah. And by the way, we also make the same returns that other private equity funds do. Yeah. So there is that difference. Even though I see that the gap is closing, of course, and more Asian investors are very plugged into this topic, especially as the wealth is being transferred from, is being transferred to the next generation.
I think I've always had this impression that rich people in Asia, to be more specific, don't care about sustainable investments. And B, that impact investing had decent returns, like not non-0% returns. But I actually didn't anticipate that you would be meeting market standard for private equity funds. So on that front, that's really encouraging. While I was preparing for this interview, one of the top Googled questions from Singapore and also in general globally, how effective is impact investing?
I feel like this is quite a subjective question because, what do you define as effective, right? As an investor, if I were to think an effective investment, for me, it has to have good returns. It has to do some kind of good, right? So, and we are really meeting these two factors. So yeah, on returns, we have the same returns as a typical private equity fund, 20% return, which is IRR. And second, on doing good. So since we created our fund in 2015, we have reached 35 million beneficiaries in countries like Indonesia, China, Philippines, and this is across sectors like education, healthcare, agriculture, topics or sectors that you kind of know are sort of the problem sectors in this part of the world. So if you ask me, is impact investing effective? I can honestly touch my heart and say yes, because I see it. Like what I mentioned earlier, right? Because I get to visit these people, because I get to see these people, I truly believe in it, because they have tears in their eyes when they talk to me, and when they tell me how their lives have changed because of some of this very innovative startups in the region. Yeah.
That's amazing. So can you share how you got into impact investing?
Yeah. So I got started because I joined the grad program in Credit Suisse. So this is this is where we met,
This
of
is
course.
how we met.
And unfortunately, Credit Suisse is no more. So yeah, there was a grad program, and it was like a 12 months rotation.
What is a grad program?
Yeah, a
Okay.
grad. I think it's a Singlish thing. A graduation analyst program. It was a 12 months rotation, and I was being rotated everywhere. One of the departments that I found myself in was this impact investing department. And I really think this is luck, honestly. There is a lot of luck involved in everything. Because then after being rotated to this department, I was supposed to join like a assistant relationship manager role. So this is just a role to basically manage the wealth of the wealthy. I wasn't really like feeling it in that role. I couldn't really see myself long term in that role. And I checked again with the boss of this impact investing department back then to ask if I could join his department. And he said no, because there is no opening. So I said, oh, but I'm really like, I just couldn't do it anymore. I was going to leave the bank if he didn't have a role. So he said, okay, you have to wait. You have to wait like 6 to 12 months. And true enough, I think after 9 months, he had a role. But it took another 1 year for me to kind of like did my like full transfer. So I think there was a lot of waiting. There was a lot of like patience required. But I really knew that I wanted to join his department, and I was willing to wait.
What were you doing while you were waiting?
But I was still in that like assistant relationship manager role. So it's not that I was jobless, but yeah, I did have to wait for very long. Yeah. But I'm glad I'm here now. Our department sort of spun off from Credit Suisse, and we are now called Double Delta. And yeah, I am very happy in this department. My boss, if you're watching, this is time to give me a pay raise for doing a shout out of your company. But yeah, it has been truly amazing to work in this space, and to have such a good boss. Yeah, I think that makes all the difference for me. Yeah. So going back to your the second part of the question, which is an advice, I think what really helped me was getting career mentors. I know it sounds so like unfashionable, it's very uncool, but I have 3 mentors. One is what I call my gay mentor. So she guided me. She is like a older person in the finance industry who knows what's what, and who can guide me to navigate my sexuality in this, very straight male dominated industry. Second is like private equity mentor. So in this industry that I'm in, so she brings a different flavor to the discussion, and I really appreciate her. And the third is just like I call her like a woman activist kind of mentor. So she's like very into like, like how as a woman we have to like take up space, we have to be confident, we have to put ourselves out there, during like like self-evaluation. We have this self-evaluation in Credit Suisse. We have to, really like, ask your friend to write your self-evaluation, so she really helped me to navigate that gender part in my career. And I think all of them have been truly fundamental in allowing me to be where I am today.
So what's the process like to get a mentor? You have 3, so clearly you have some tricks up your sleeve.
One is to join a network. So I was in like the women network in the bank. I was also in the LGBT network of the bank. But also I joined like the CFA network, and I joined like there are like women finance network out there. So the one that I joined was FWA, so Financial Women Association. So they run their own mentor-mentee program. Usually you have to pay for these things, but I think it's really worth it because you get like a lifetime connection with people that do the same things as you, but older and more experienced.
I know that we, in our private conversations, have always floated the idea of leaving Singapore, going and trying new places.
Yeah.
But your biggest thing is always, I can't connect to people outside of Southeast Asia the way that I can right now. When I'm speaking to women in Indonesia talking about healthcare, there is that understanding, but first because of the language, right?
Yeah.
You know how to speak
sure.
Bahasa, but also you said something that stuck with me, which is I could have been them if I was born in another world.
Yeah.
And that authenticness is not something you can replicate. If you are doing impact investment in Latin America, for example, right?
Yeah. The fact that I speak Bahasa makes all the difference. I am suddenly included in the inner circle, and I am suddenly sort of one of them. Of course, there is also still that little bit of difference because I look super Chinese, and usually people in third-tier cities and below, they are usually not Chinese. They are like of a different race, and like it could have been even better if I don't look super Chinese like I do.
You're also saying that sustainable investments is the way of the future, and so the hope is that more and more investment firms, I mean, they're already doing this now, right? Where they have an impact investment arm, but hopefully that arm is now going to grow larger and larger, and more people going into it, kind of matching the market demand, like you mentioned as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
Such that we're really changing the way that we look at investments altogether. Not, some bougie SMU alumni like this one sitting behind a monitor looking at like,
with my vest. Don't forget the vest.
The Patagonia vest. Oh my God. I have friends who wear it unironically, they wear it in Singapore.
Yeah. Why?
Why?
No, but yeah, to expound on that, it's true because if you're looking at like and this is what gets me a bit angry at sometimes, if you look at the total wealth of the world, like all the wealth of the world, managed assets, it's only 1% that is going to impact investing. It's 1%. And if you look at 1%, that little slice, it's only 5% that is going to Southeast Asia.
Wow.
So you can imagine how much actually there is. And if you think about impact investment, actually, most of the problems are in Asia. 3 of 4 of the most polluted rivers, they are in Asia. I think we are like 50% of the manufacturing output comes from Asia. I think something like half of the world hungry people are in Asia. So there is a lot of demand, and there are a lot of problems to be solved in this part of the world, but the money is not flowing here. Yeah, so the hope is that there is more money to match that need actually.
Most of your investors right now in your fund, where are they coming from? Asia or outside?
So we have a lot of small ticket investors in Asia. But the big chunk of the money, usually they come from Europe,
That's really ironic then.
Yeah.
And I think that makes a lot more sense why this whole, that whole very nice, those percentages that you just mentioned, right? The 1% goes into impact investing, 5% of that 1% goes into Southeast Asia. Because understandably so, the Europeans do not feel that close connection to Southeast Asia. The hope is that Asian wealth is now more aware.
Correct.
And they would be the best to do impact investing because they also feel the most close to what's happening on the ground.
Hopefully, yeah. And we see that, for example, with Australia. Australians, they really care about the oceans in Australia.
Of course.
They care about, the social, economic issues in Australia. And so the Australians are very good at investing money in Australian companies. Yeah, so this is the hope for Asia, because there are really a lot of problems that we need to solve. Yeah, like yesterday. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think also the wealth that is growing in Asia right now, we're kind of seeing, so, people always talk about new wealth in Asia because there's very little old money in Asia, just the reality of it. But there is that transition phase where now you're no longer pitching to new money. You're now actually pitching to the second generation who have grown up with a certain status of wealth, but because of that, there is that level of privilege. People who are more privileged may have the space, the capacity to give more empathy.
And I think that is the Maslow hierarchy of needs, right? Because they have all their lower needs met, and now they have the capacity to think, what else? Self-actualization, Yeah, so it is true. And I hope that they get there.
So we've talked a lot about the merits of impact investing. I am really curious to hear you talk about, when does impact investing not work?
Wow. Well, I think the reality is impact investment is just a form of investment. And like many investments, there are good investments, there are better investments, right? And also there are bad investments. So are there bad fund managers who are doing impact investing? Probably, and you should exercise the same amount of due diligence you would, right? If you are to invest in an impact investing fund or impact investing company, because the truth is there are good ones and there are bad ones. Just because it is an impact investing doesn't mean that it's going to be good and it's going to be it's going to make you money and have positive impact in the world. There is also this concept of impact washing, just like there is greenwashing, where people exaggerate the amount of impact that they have. So we also have to be aware of that, and hopefully, the regulations and auditing process will weed out all this noise, because it is truly unfortunate. We are in a space where we need a lot of impact money, and yet there are people engaging in impact washing and greenwashing, and it's really not helping the cause. Yeah. So I would say do your due diligence as you would a normal investment, because there are going to be good ones and there are going to be bad ones. Yeah.
What are some surefire signs of impact washing?
If it's too good to be true, it's probably too good to be true. If you see a fund that has, never made any bad investment, for example, that is just, I don't know, that you can't go on like that forever. If you see really inflated numbers, I think that is usually a surefire sign. But of course, all these things you have to compare it to the peers, right? So you have to kind of know what is the norm in that industry that you're looking at. So for example, if you are looking at an agriculture company that, within 5 months, they are reaching 500 million farmers, and their peers are doing 20 million, 30 million. So what is that saying? Are they inflating their numbers? Are they reaching out to farmers, and even though the farmers don't use their app, for example, they also include it in their account? I think just a little bit of research will be able to sort of show you what's what. Yeah.
How often do you come across in your line of work companies that are trying to really inflate their social impact just to get your investment?
I wouldn't say that they are trying to inflate, but we have come across companies that are perhaps not as tight in their definition of impact. So, for example, companies that, if it's let's say it's an app of a company that is in agriculture, where you can use the app to look at your farm and to see how well your farm is doing, for example. Some people measure, if you just open the app once a year, that means you have benefited from the app, and you are part of the beneficiary group, which is not believable, right? Like, I mean, even as a normal person, you're like, how can that be true? That if you just open the app once a year, you have benefited from this app. Yeah. So we kind of tweak the counting process and we say, this is not representative. Maybe it should be, in this harvest season, they have to open it for at least, 5 times. And they have to not just open the app, but they have to do other things with the app, and they have to report that they have, maybe higher yield at this, for the next harvest, for example. So we have not seen like a blatant just like just them like reporting bad, like inflated numbers. But yes, we have to sort of tweak the accounting system a little bit sometimes. Yeah.
To me, that sounds like just regular old good due diligence.
Yeah.
So exactly what you were saying earlier, right? Like, pretty industry standard. You always have to do due diligence, both as an investor who wants to invest in impact investment funds, as well as in the fund itself. You need to do the good due diligence to verify that these companies are what they say they are.
Yeah, exactly.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
What's your favorite company that you've invested in?
Ooh.
Can you share that story?
Yeah, I won't say the company name if that's okay, but it is this company in Indonesia that is an education tech company. So the problem in Indonesia is it is the 4th largest education system in the world, believe it or not. It is US, China, India, and then the next one is Indonesia.
Just sheer population.
Correct.
That makes sense.
Yeah, but I mean, it blew my mind.
As an Indonesian.
Yeah, as an Indonesian. But many things blow my mind. So I'm easily surprised. So 4th largest, but we are nowhere near, our education quality is nowhere near our peers, even in Southeast Asia. So the problem really stems from the sort of low quality of teachers, unfortunately, especially in the rural regions. So what this company does is they come up with an app and they record teachers. Let's say you're a teacher in Jakarta who is really like a good teacher based on, students' feedback and, based on the school feedback. You're a really great teacher. You're a math teacher. Okay, let me record you teaching this chapter for this level and let me put it in the platform. So just one video of a teacher can reach 200 million population. And they do it in a very cheap way because it is a scale game for them. It is not, they don't need to charge an exorbitant price for that video. So you just charge point something cents, right, in Sing dollars. And the students in rural regions, they love it because they get first of all, they get to use their phone and and they get to learn from their phone, and they get to learn very teachers who teach well, they are usually very effective. So you don't have to have an hour of teaching. It's just a few minutes of, proper telling you what's what. And they can go through the whole curriculum online, just videos of teachers, and they have it in every chapter, in every subject, for every level. So actually during COVID, this app became gained a lot of popularity because people did not go to school, but they continued to study because they already had this platform. Everything was, all the foundation was already done. Yeah, so now on top of students, they are also training teachers. They are also training employees who want to it's like our skills future sort of thing. Yeah, so this app, for example, when we invested in them, they had less than 3 million students using the app, and now they have more than 30 million. So they have, so it's so simple if you think about it.
And that duration, 3 million to 30 million.
So we invested in them in 2017.
Okay.
So that is 6-7 years. Yeah. So it's, I don't think I can share the returns on this investment, but if you think about, it's from less than 3 million students to 30 million students, it is, the scale is like that. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I got tingles as you were describing it because you're right. It's so helpful.
Yeah.
Everyone when you have a not fantastic teacher, you just Google,
Yeah.
and often you have, you know, you just look it up on YouTube,
Yeah.
and then you just watch
Yeah.
it.
And the best part about this app is you know, you have a few teachers like sitting in an office, and they have like a live coaching. So if you have questions, you just type in, and then a real teacher will reply you with the answer of your question. Yeah.
So it's YouTube but better. I mean, YouTube is a pretty rudimentary way.
Yeah. And of course, they do gamification so that it's interesting for the students. You know, they want to learn. I mean, of course, there are all these different perks that, you know, make students like really, really want to use the app. And
And the Indonesian education system, is it standardized enough for this to be
yes,
effective?
it is. Yeah. So there is like national exam, and it is standardized.
Okay.
Yeah, it is. It is pretty. It is something that really touched my heart, because, you know, also because I have access to really good education, both in Indonesia and in Singapore. And I know that, you know, just because I have access to all these things, it changes the course of my life. Yeah. And I know that, like you said, if I were just born a few streets down the road in my parents' house in Medan, my life would have turned out very, very differently. Yeah. And I am always very, very thankful, of course. But it's just like, it's just so unfair sometimes. Yeah. Like, why do I deserve all these really, really good things? Yeah. And other people don't. Yeah.
And so with companies like this, you're really making good education accessible to the masses.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm sure, like you mentioned, even though you pay for the lesson, it's very measurable.
It's very little compared to what they would have paid if they were to, you know, go to a proper tuition center, for example, in a rural area. Not forgetting this, an archipelago, you know, sometimes you don't even have access to tuition centers. You have to take a boat to another island to go to the tuition center. You know, like the cost, the accessibility, and the quality. So students who use this app, they are, I think, 2.5 times more likely to enter university.
Wow.
Yeah. So
that's awesome.
I mean, it is a win-win situation for everybody involved. And I think this is what we mean by impact investing, because this kind of videos, a kid in Jakarta who have access to private tuition, whose tutors come to their house to teach them, they are never going to access this silly little videos on their phones. You know, they have teachers to teach them. So this is really targeted to like the people in the rural areas who do not have access to quality education. Yeah, and it is cheap for them. They use it. It makes money for the company. It makes money for us as a fund who invest in them. It makes money for the investors who invest in our fund. So I think everybody wins in this situation. Yeah.
And it's going back to exactly your definition earlier, that your definition of impact investing is the more underprivileged people you serve, the more money you make.
Correct.
And that is our definition of what a socially impactful company is.
Correct. Yeah.
I think the skeptic in me immediately thought about, how about those, because I'm sure there's a limitation to which teachers will allow themselves to be filmed and uploaded onto this platform. I'm just imagining, and I don't know if I'm just being a skeptical person right now, but if you were to, you know, film this in a pretty upscale tuition center, or you go to a private school and you upload this, right? Then have you received any complaints from those institutions being like, hey, we don't want our content on this platform?
Okay. So actually the teachers work directly with the platform.
Oh,
yeah.
I see,
so they want to be featured. So they actually have like a proper studio event for like the recording.
I see. And then they vet the teachers who will go onto their platform. So it's not it's not a student who's just filming.
Yeah, no, yeah. So they pay these teachers to be on the platform.
That was my next question, right? Like, what's their incentive?
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty great.
Yeah.
Again, like, I think really good companies in this part of the world is just making already existing good ideas more localized for the region.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
So YouTube has always existed. I used YouTube during college and high school as well, because sometimes my teachers didn't really explain it that well, or I didn't get it. Like it's probably also me. And so you just like replay the video a couple times and I'm like, oh, this makes so much sense.
Yeah. So do you record your teachers
in
college or whatever?
No.
Oh, okay. I recorded my teachers. I think that's bad. They have all been deleted. It was just for personal use. But
in lecture, you would record them?
I record.
You know, the thing is though, like by the time I went to college, that's our age difference. By the time I went to college, they would record each lesson.
You see, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. But only the students would be able to access it. So you can't upload it onto YouTube or something.
Sure, yeah. Because sometimes it's not your day, you know? Like you haven't had your coffee and you're not like registering anything that the teacher is saying. So I would just record and I'm like, okay, I will listen to you later. Yeah. But today, now, at this moment, I'm just going to nod and pretend that I understand.
Yeah, if you just, went to college a few years later, you wouldn't even need to show up. Yeah. You didn't even need to bring your phone. It'll do it for you. Oh my gosh, gone are the days where you would just be like, I'm too tired. Yeah. Today is not my day, as per Cindy Pratiwi over here. What's the best advice you've ever heard or received?
Oh shit. I've not thought about this actually.
It was on the Google Docs.
I know. I wanted to talk about the mentors thing. Oh, okay, I know. Okay. So, so one of my mentors actually told me to get professional help, to seek professional mental health. And that was the most like life-changing thing that I have ever done for myself in my life. Yeah. And I started seeing a therapist 7 years ago, and I have not stopped ever since. I'm addicted. That's probably not a very good thing.
Typical gay line. Lesbians love our therapists.
Yeah.
Why did she give you that piece of advice? Where were you at that point in time?
So I was struggling with my sexuality, and I was really in my like lowest of low. And I said, why don't you? And she said, I remember, why don't you talk to someone? I said, I'm talking to you. And she said, no, like someone like professional. I said, you are professional. You have helped me. And she said, no, like, actually paying for someone to, listen to your problems.
She just didn't want to listen anymore.
She had it.
She was like, I should be paid? So you can pay me or you should pay someone else.
And actually, she recommended me to a place that is free in the beginning. So, so I went there and I was like, it was so life-changing. And my life is never the same again.
Where is that place? Is it still around?
It is not around anymore, unfortunately. Okay. Yeah, but it was a temple in Bishan. Yeah.
It was a temple in Bishan.
Yeah, I know. It's a lot.
Yeah,
it's a lot of information.
And when you say you were struggling with your sexuality, we didn't really focus on it during this interview, but I don't know, maybe we can do another one. But can you expand a little bit more about what you were going through?
Yeah, funny enough, I did not know of a single gay or a queer person until I realized that I was queer. And
then they just came in flocks.
Yeah. And that was really confusing. And it was really, really bad. And I really I remember the first therapy session, I told my therapist, the goal of therapy, you usually do this goal of therapy thing, no? So I said, the goal of therapy is for me to marry a man. That's the goal of therapy. Yeah. And I could see her heart broke because she knew she was not going to be able to give it to me. And I said, that's all I wanted. Yeah.
Wow.
It's so crazy. Yeah. It's so crazy. I had long hair and everything featured here.
I'll feature it.
Yeah. It is wild, no? Yeah.
And that statement really encapsulates how much pain you were experiencing.
Yeah. I mean, and we really worked through it with this free therapy. Oh my gosh. Bless her soul. Janice became a household brand for me because my friends know, every time I went to therapy, I would tell my friends and they'll be like, oh yeah, so Janice is great. And I would always tell them about Janice. And I told Janice this, like, Janice, you have now become a household brand for me, and all my friends know about you. Nobody knows how you look like, but everybody knows the things that you tell me in therapy. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's Janice. Yeah. Every now and then I still look up like Janice because she wanted to open her own clinic, and I had always encouraged her to because I really wanted to go to see her again. Yeah, every now and then I would search like Janice therapy, like has she opened her clinic? But I think she hasn't because I haven't. Yeah, we have no way of contact. Yeah, and this is like, yeah, this is a very typical like lesbian. Not that she is queer, but it's a very typical lesbian experience of like longing and like.
There's a book. There have been books published about this longingness and lesbians falling for their therapists. But,
no, I do not have like this feelings for my
that's
therapist.
what you say on this. It's fine. Anyway,
she understands me. She sees
in a way that
me.
no one else does.
If you enjoyed this episode, hit a like and subscribe down below. 3 seconds from you makes a massive impact on getting more people to hear the inspiring stories and advice from our guests. Stick around for B-roll, and thanks so much for spending your time with us.
Hello, Betty. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
And we'll sign off and we'll go grab dinner and drink.
Yes. Not that we have been drinking.
No.